Many regard socialism as something belonging to the past, and perhaps it ought to be so. Yet it endures, not by accident, but because it has been adopted as the political creed of powerful international financial interests that shape the course of the modern world. For this reason, socialism remains not only part of our present, but also quite possibly part of our future. To understand socialism, then, is to gain insight into recent history, to recognize the forces at work in the present, and most importantly, to glimpse the kind of future that lies ahead. The many strands of socialism, whether Marxism-Leninism, commonly known as communism, social democracy, Fabianism, or others, have driven a series of far-reaching social, political, economic, and cultural transformations across Europe and the wider world since the early 20th century. Much of this stems from socialism's own roots in earlier disruptions within Western political life. In broad terms, this historical trajectory can be seen as a progression from monarchy to liberal democracy, and from there to socialist dictatorship. Put differently, it marks a movement from right to left, the right embodying the principles of conservatism and tradition, the left embodying the forces of restless change and revolution, often experienced as upheaval and destruction. The familiar political terms right and left trace their origins to Western Europe, most famously to revolutionary France. In the National Assembly, supporters of the monarchy were seated to the right of the presiding official, while advocates of the revolution occupied the seats to his left. This arrangement was not accidental, but steeped in tradition. For centuries, the right hand of a ruler had been the place of honor, symbolizing authority delegated to trusted representatives. The imagery carries deep cultural weight. The Bible itself describes Christ as seated at the right hand of God, and across languages and traditions, the word right has been bound to ideas of uprightness, correctness, and moral order. From this root flow associations such as the Greek orthos, right, correct, orthodoxia, right belief, the Latin ritus, custom, ritual, the German Recht, law, right, and the English righteous or rightwise, meaning morally upright, virtuous, and law-abiding. The left, by contrast, carried less favorable connotations. In Latin, sinister meant left, a term that evolved in French and English into meanings like malignant, wicked, and evil, echoed in biblical passages that placed the blessed at God's right hand and the condemned at his left. The concept of righteousness, truth, order, and justice did not originate with modern liberal democrats. Throughout recorded history, it has been closely tied to monarchy, which was traditionally entrusted with the task of establishing and safeguarding righteousness for the good of society. In ancient Egypt, texts describe the king as placed on earth by the deity to speak justice to the people, uphold righteousness, and combat evil. Similar portrayals of rulers as guardians of justice can be found in the Bible, as well as in other religious and philosophical writings. It is no coincidence that the sages of the ancient world, among them Plato, envisioned the ideal society as one ruled by wise kings. Indeed, Plato's own work on the subject carried the title politeia, meaning constitution, or just government, a term later distorted into republic by the Roman statesman Cicero and subsequently by liberal scholars. The notion of kingdom, and especially the kingdom of God, belongs deeply to the Christian tradition, whereas the idea of a republic does not. The figure of the king is immediately recognizable as part of Europe's Christian and even pre-Christian heritage. By contrast, the title president calls to mind something far more mundane, someone presiding over a business meeting, such as the president of the Board of Trade in England. This connection is no accident, for the world of commerce is precisely where both Republican anti-monarchism and socialism first took root. In the prevailing intellectual climate dominated by the left, monarchy is often dismissed as a symbol of ostentation or undemocratic practices. Yet republican systems, including communist regimes, show little difference. Their rulers live in palaces and enjoy lives of privilege no less than monarchs. As for the claim that monarchy is inherently undemocratic, it rests on a mistaken definition of democracy as direct rule by the people, something that does not exist anywhere in the Western world. If, however, democracy is understood as government conducted in accordance with the will and the interests of the people, then traditional monarchy fits this definition well. Indeed, even Plato's philosopher kings were envisioned as rulers whose authority rested on the approval of the community and whose task was to govern for its benefit. To the extent that monarchy safeguards the principles of righteousness for the benefit of society, it may be seen as the highest expression of a democratic institution. History bears this out. The decline of monarchy has gone hand in hand with the erosion of traditional society and the weakening of the very concept of righteousness, of what is right and what is wrong, upon which both true monarchy and true democracy rest. Although this decline is often celebrated as progress, the record suggests otherwise. Time and again, the replacement of monarchy with republicanism and so-called liberal democracy has set the stage for the eventual rise of socialist dictatorship. This is not to suggest, of course, that every nation must adopt monarchism. Each people has the right to determine its own form of government, and under the right conditions, republics can indeed function as genuine democratic societies. Yet it should also be recognized that republican systems do not always fulfill their promise, nor necessarily prove superior to monarchy. What history does make clear, however, is that the path from monarchy to socialist dictatorship has been traced more than once, and this is a fact difficult to ignore. This transition can be grouped into three main types, depending on the methods employed by its architects. Overt, type 1, gradual and almost imperceptible, type 2, and covert, type 3. The most striking examples of type 1 are found in Russia, Germany, and Austria, which moved from monarchy to socialist republic in rapid succession, 1917, 1918, and 1999 respectively. Type 2, by contrast, is illustrated by the United States, which evolved from a royal colony to a liberal capitalist state, and from there into a quasi-socialist order under the administrations of Presidents Clinton and Obama. In this form of transition, the change is so gradual that it passes largely unnoticed by the general public, though historians and other keen observers are not so easily deceived. America, despite appearances, is no exception to this pattern. The clearest illustration of type 3, however, is Britain. There, the monarch has remained the formal head of state, yet since 1945 the country has alternated between Fabian socialists, Labour, and so-called conservatives, Tories, the latter increasingly adopting policies drawn from the Fabian socialist playbook. Across these and similar examples, one pattern stands out. As the state accumulates ever greater powers, democracy, understood as government in accordance with the will and interests of the people, let alone rule by the people, has steadily eroded. Closely tied to this decline is the fading of the very concept of righteousness. What is first presented as the benevolent nanny state in the British sense of the welfare state soon hardens into an all-controlling, repressive socialist big brother state. Modern history, then, may be described as a journey from monarchy to socialism, from righteousness to unrighteousness, and from democracy to dictatorship. Thinkers such as Karl Marx and their 21st century progressive heirs would have us believe that this shift from right to left is the inevitable course of history. In reality, such developments are the product of calculated designs by certain self-serving financial and political interests. To insist they cannot be avoided is, in effect, to accept the supremacy of selfishness, injustice, and evil. To be continued.